The valley smelled of old fear. For 40 days, two armies had stared across this divide, paralyzed. For 40 days, the silence of the morning had been broken by the same sound, the tread of iron. And then, the voice. A voice that stained the air, demanding a single champion to decide the fate of a kingdom. And for 40 days, no one had answered. The man who owned that voice was Goliath of Gath. He was a monument of conventional strength, a walking tank. The most well-known manuscripts describe him as a monster, encased in over 100 pounds of bronze-scale mail. He wore a bronze helmet. He wore bronze shin guards. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam. Its iron point alone weighed 15 pounds, and a shield-bearer walked before him just in case he was not protected enough. He was built for one purpose: close quarters, hand-to-hand combat, a human siege engine. His challenge was a classic duel of champions, one man for one man to decide the war, and the army of Israel broke. They were paralyzed. They looked at Goliath and saw an unbeatable force. They judged the fight by the established rules of war, and by those rules, he was invincible. Into this sickness of dread walked an outsider. He was not a soldier. He was a shepherd boy, sent to the front lines to drop off lunch for his brothers. He carried the scent of the wilderness, not the stench of the camp. He heard the taunts that had terrorized the army for a month. And he felt no fear, only offense. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine," he asked, "that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His confidence sounded like insanity to the hollowed-out soldiers. He was brought before King Saul. The king saw only a boy. "You cannot go against this Philistine," Saul stated. "You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But the king was desperate, and so he offered David the only help he knew. He offered him convention. He geared the boy in his own royal armor. We hear the scrape of bronze, the groan of leather buckles. David could barely move. It was a dead weight. A trap. And here, in the king's tent, he made the single most important decision of the entire story. He took it all off. He rejected the king's protection. He refused to play the giant's game. "I cannot go in these," he said, "for I am not used to them." He was rejecting the very rules that had led to 40 days of paralysis. He would trust his own strength. He walked away, armed only with what he knew: his staff, his shepherd's bag, and his sling. The army saw a giant. David saw a target. What if the giant's greatest strength, his monstrous size, was the very source of his greatest weakness? Compelling theories suggest Goliath's gigantism was likely caused by acromegaly, a condition from a tumor on the pituitary gland. It would explain his size. But it has a terrible side effect. That tumor presses on the optic nerves. It causes severe nearsightedness, or worse, double vision. This remains a hypothesis, but it makes the strange details of the last 40 days suddenly snap into focus. Why was this champion, this legend, led onto the battlefield by an attendant every morning? Perhaps because he could not see the terrain. Why was he surprisingly stationary? Why did he always roar, "Come here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds"? Why did he invite combat, but never charge? Because a man weighed down by 100 pounds of armor who cannot see his own feet clearly does not run over uneven ground. His slowness was not arrogance, it was a vulnerability. He was not a nimble warrior, he was an immobile target. The valley still smelled of fear, but the giant had not moved. He was waiting. Now look at David. King Saul saw a shepherd boy with a toy. He failed to see what was, in the hands of an expert, one of the most devastating projectile weapons of the ancient world. This was not a plaything. It was military grade. Ancient armies regularly used slingers alongside archers to rain down death from a distance. The physics were terrifying. Whipping it in a circle, an expert could hurl a dense, well-chosen stone at over 60 miles per hour. The stopping power was not a sting. It was a bone-shattering impact. The effective range of a military sling was well over 200 yards, far outside the reach of a man with a spear. And David was an expert. He wasn't a soldier, true. He was a survivor. He had told Saul he protected his flock from lions and bears. He had spent thousands of hours honing his accuracy, not for sport, but for survival. He was a master of his weapon. So this was the real battle. It was not a warrior versus a defenseless boy. It was a slow, partially blind giant, armed for a close-range fight he could not initiate, versus a nimble, highly skilled projectile warrior armed with a devastating long-range weapon. The fight was a strategic mismatch from the start. David walks out into the valley. Goliath hears him approach before he sees him. He squints, trying to bring the blur into focus. He roars, insulted, "Am I a dog, that you come to me with sticks?" Sticks, plural. David carried only one staff. The giant was seeing double. Goliath tries to reclaim the narrative of fear. "Come here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds." But David does not stop. He does not flinch. For the first time in 40 days, someone was not afraid. David's voice is not a bellow. It is cold. It is a blade that cuts through the valley. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." He doesn't just match the giant's confidence. He prophesies his doom. "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head." This was brilliant psychological warfare. David reframes the entire conflict. It is not his fight, it is God's, and it is already over. David runs, not away, toward the battle line. He is a fast-moving target. The giant lurches, struggling to track him. David reaches into his shepherd's bag. He does not fumble. His hand selects one of the 5 smooth riverbed stones. He places it in the leather pouch. He whirls the sling. It builds a terrifying whistling shriek. Goliath raises his shield, but he is too slow. He is blind. He is aiming at the sound. David is aiming at the forehead. He releases. The stone flies with incredible force. It does not glance. It does not stun. It strikes. The text says it sank into his forehead. It penetrated bone. A kill shot. Then, a sound like a failing tower. The crash of 100 pounds of bronze and iron as he falls, face down, in the dust. The battle is over. David runs to the body, draws the giant's own heavy sword, and seals the victory. We have told this story as a miracle, a 1 in a million shot. But it was a calculated act of strategy. It teaches us that giants are not always what they seem. The world is full of them, and victory lies not in matching their strength, but in seeing their weakness. History is decided not by the man who holds the heavier sword, but by the man who sees the truth of the battlefield. David's victory sealed his fate, painting a target on his back for a new kind of enemy, a jealous king. Subscribe to witness the legends history tried to bury, because the line between a hero and a monster is written by the victor.